Now that you have an understanding about how to create a grid, how to create topics, and some various ways to assign the work and give feedback, it's important to think now about the grading itself. Regardless of how you assign this, whether it's a link on a Google Doc, whether you use Schoology, or whether you use Google Classroom, no matter what, you will need to actually sign into Flipgrid to access, view, and grade. So at this point, it may be really important to think about the efficacy of having a class period with topics and grids as opposed to an entire course, because that's a lot of students to go through and it could be a lot of toggling with your gradebook. If you elect to use Google Classroom as a way to assign Flipgrid to your students, a recommendation may be to ask students to at least mark the assignment as completed or submitted. While they're not physically handing anything into Google Classroom to you, you at least have a record of who's handed things in so you know who to look for when you grade. It doesn't mean that everyone will do it, but at least it gives you a good starting point when it comes time to mark. You will need to log into Flipgrid to access student work, and you may want to have a blank roster report or printouts of rubrics where you can mark the scores. To be able to get the information back, you will need to create the assignment within Infinite Campus and fill in the data. If you're going to use Schoology to assign Flipgrid, we strongly recommend that you use the assignment material rather than the embed external tool assignment. That way you can use the rubric, which is a very powerful feature for you to utilize. You may want to ask students to mark the work as submitted within Schoology so you know what to grade. And there will be a video in just a moment to show you what that looks like. You will need to log into Flipgrid to access the work. And in a second tab, you can click on a student name and mark the rubric scores for that student. Once you're done, you just simply sync the Schoology and Infinite Campus gradebooks and everything's ready to go. It would look like I'm now currently signed in as a student for this Flipgrid class where I demonstrated how to make the assignments. Say, for instance, I was using the embed. As a student, what I would see now would be the assignment. I'd be able to sign in, I'd be able to do my recording, and I would also be able to see how I am being marked and how I'm being graded. Now, what you'll notice over here is where it says a submit assignment. Maybe you want to make an assignment or a direction that will say how to mark this. What I can do is click on the button, and I could simply just go to create, and I could just say done, and then hit submit. What I've done now is I've created a timestamped record of when something was submitted, and in the next screen I'll show you, you'll see a count of who's handed things in. To switch over to the teacher view of what just happened in the previous scene, I'm at the assignment Flipgrid Embed, and I can see that one student's handed it in. So simply by just filling something in that box to submit the assignment, it gave me a list of whose work needs to be graded, which is a really, really nice thing. I still will need to sign into Flipgrid in a separate window. And so what I would probably do is I would make the browser smaller and then have side-by-side windows so I can see the student name and I can find their grid and grade their work. Now, if I was to click on this individual student, what I'm going to see is going to be just the word done that the student handed in, which doesn't do anything to help me out. What is helpful, though, is this little rubric square. So now, if I have a small window where I can watch the Flipgrid, I can go ahead and I can mark as I'm watching what I see. When I hit save, that score is recorded. I can then post it to Infinite Campus via the gradebook sync. Now, if a student wanted to redo the work, the student could resubmit and mark as well. And I'll actually get a denotation whether something's been submitted the first time or whether something's been resubmitted more than once if I'm looking at an iterative type of a practice process. And so that's a really helpful thing to see too. So this rounds out the different options and experiences that you can consider for Flipgrid in your classroom. You may want to think about how cohorting or staggering assignments could be helpful. It could be a lot of video to go through, especially if the videos that you're asking for are going to be more than a minute or two in length. Consider how Flipgrid could be an option. We have a lot of barriers to student learning, and maybe this can be a way for students to submit work. Remember, students can record themselves live, or they actually could upload existing video that they've shot somewhere. Maybe that's on a camera or something they made in a different project. As you are making your Flipgrid assignments, consider your goal. Make your instructions and your criteria and your expectations geared around that goal, whether it's a demonstration of knowledge, whether it's simply just practice to develop a skill, or if you're looking for some sort of a social interaction with the age of distance learning. Keep that in mind as you build your expectations and as you build the experiences for both you and your students. Finally, consider how you can give feedback to these students. If we're looking at deepening knowledge and developing skill, It's good for students to hear how they did and where they can have areas of strengths and where they also have areas to grow. Very, very important part. And if you're using a rubric, this could be a nice way to demonstrate that understanding and measure the student growth over time. Thank you so much, and good luck with using Flipgrid.